Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm just gonna move this slightly over here. There we go. And today I'm going to be sitting and knitting with you, and we're going to be discussing the commuting uni experience. So basically, I'm making this video because I myself am a commuting student, but I just don't feel like that commuting student experience is talked about enough in all, like, you know, within unis themselves, within, you know, I just felt when I was introducing myself and everyone, every time we went to a new class, for like you would go to like freshers and everyone would be speaking about their accommodation, the moving in and things like that. And I just kind of felt, and then come second semester, I was fully commuting, and everyone was introducing themselves to their new classmates and things again. And I just felt really left out of that conversation. I felt very forgotten, like I was being left behind, and it was a very weird feeling because obviously, you know, it's never been something you have to concern yourself about before. But suddenly you're an adult, suddenly, there's all this independence that you're supposed to be wanting, there's all this pressure to grow up and take things by storm, the world's your oyster. And obviously there is that romanticized independence element, and obviously even sitting here now, I'll wait to embark on my second year of university, and I'm commuting because I feel it's too fresh and too soon after the failed attempt last year. I did speak about it, and and maybe if I had spoken to more people that would have been positive to give it another go for second year, then I maybe would have got myself into gear and looked into it a little bit more. But so many people had agreed, just give yourself another, like, a 2 years of just consistent same place of education, same home thing, and see how you go, and see if that gives you enough time to kind of sort out whatever was going on when you had to take yourself away from being a residential student, which is fair enough. So everyone's a commuting student for different reasons, whether you found you know, being in halls too inaccessible and you couldn't stand living with people you didn't know. Maybe you found the change too big. Maybe you needed that home support and home comforts that, still living with your parents provides. And there's no shame in needing that support from your parents. And, because when you think about it, you're in your early teens, early 20s, you're just a fresh adult. Like, 2 minutes ago you were still in school, you were still and like, I'm now going into my third year out of school because I'm now 20, and it still feels like 5 minutes ago I was in school. But what I'm trying to say is that you are still young. Give yourself a chance to evolve and grow, and give yourself a chance to want that independence, because it feels like when you're a teenager all you want is that independence, and suddenly when you're in your late teens, early 20s, suddenly that independence is yours, and you're like, okay, what do I do with that? And then uni seems like the perfect gateway into adulthood, and you apply, and then suddenly it's here and it's scary, and for some people that's just a little bit too much. Especially when, you know some people forget that sometimes independence is a little bit trickier for people more than others, and it shouldn't be something that we measure within age. It just should be different. Like, independence is different no matter how old you are, no matter, like, obviously, there is a certain age element, but especially within adults, independence varies so differently. And that's what people need to remember, is independence varies so differently between adults, from adult to adult, and especially within new adults, like when you're in your late teens, early 20s. And that's what people need to remember, and it's okay to need that support. But anyway, I'm gonna go on a tangent about that if I don't shut up. So there is lots of reasons someone would choose to commute, but what I kind of want to talk about today is the pros and cons of, like, the reality and because there is good about the commuting experience, but there is also the bad. And there's some things that I'm going to personally implement for myself this year to kind of build up that independence that I feel like I was lacking last year, and steps I'm going to take to integrate myself into uni life. So if there comes a time in third or fourth year that I'm like, okay, I'm ready to revisit the idea of, getting a flat, or going, like, I don't think third or fourth years going to, like, because like halls are specifically, the halls I was in anyway were specifically for first years, and there's just so many ways that things vary for you. So no matter what your situation is, whatever your pathway to independence is, it's okay to want to take your time with it. And like, I'm gonna give some advice, so let's just get into it. So one thing I'm gonna say is as a commuting student, try and integrate yourself into student life as much as possible. Like, I know it kind of is a thought, like, oh, I can't go on nights out, because everyone's having nights out there and I live like an hour away and things like that. And honestly, that is a pain. And I was only able to go on nights out and then stay at the accommodation I had that I wasn't using for that night, and then go back home the next day or whatever. And there was a day where actually I went on a night out and then went to uni classes directly after staying in the accommodation. And that was kind of like a little taste of what it would be like if I had stayed. And that was a moment where I was like, okay, maybe I could have done this if I had stayed. But then you know there's just so much what ifs in the situation. But anyway, yeah, just integrate yourself. It doesn't have to be nights out, because I know that's not accessible for all commuting students. But maybe join a society, speak to other commuting students. Like, there's commuting students that I know that went to the same school as me, because obviously if they went to the same school as me, this uni is also like the most local to them as well. And we ran in the same circles when we were in secondary school, so it's cool to keep in contact with them. And just have speak to people in classes. There is ways to get to know people. And I know it feels like everyone's got their little friendship groups that they develop, like during freshers and during like within their accommodation and things like that. And if you don't build that, it kind of feels like you've kind of cut yourself off. And to be honest, I did cut myself off last academic year, but this year we are going to do different. I'm going to join dance if I can, depending on when the like dance sessions that I'm interested in, depending on what time they finish. Because unfortunately, and this will probably affect a lot of commuting students up and down the UK, but they have cut bus services so much, and it's so annoying. So that's also something you need to consider. But definitely just speak to as many people as you can, get as comfortable as you can around people, and just get settled in. So yeah. Another thing is don't be embarrassed about being a commuting student. Don't feel like you're, less mature, less of an adult because you've decided to commute. Because you might be doing it because you just need that extra support. Because like I say, independence and readiness for change and things varies so much within adults that it's okay if it takes you longer to be okay with the idea of moving out. And like, it just varies so much for people that you can't judge people on the decision for that. And like, everyone's ready for different things at different times. So that's just a little thing. So just don't be embarrassed. Like, in some second semester I had to go to these new classes and explain my major. And you're like, oh, so where do you live in any of the accommodations near here? And I had to be like, no, I'm actually a commuting student. I grew up in the area and I live about an hour away and I commute. And a few people would be like, oh, that's nice. Like, oh, why did she decide to do that? I could never have done that. Like, that's pathetic. And some people will have that attitude, but the reality is, again, that everything's so different for everyone, especially when you're at that like final developing stage at late teens, early 20s, and you're developing into that fully grown adult, you know, because you're like, I can't stress this enough. You're still young. There's still time to develop that independence. There's still, you know, you know, like as a teenager, I feel like I very much didn't and bother to develop my independence that much because I didn't feel any need to. But obviously, in my 20s, I'm definitely like, okay, I feel like I should have in my teens. I'd be much more better off in my 20s if I had taken time in my teens to really become more independent, to feel more comfortable in my own company and things. But that's another conversation for another day. Um, and my dad has decided this is a good time to hoover. Fine. Um, but yeah, that's just a suggestion. Because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to feel left behind by your peers, to feel like, yeah, you want that independence, but it's also scary to go and take it, and it's scary to and frustrating to feel like you're not ready to take it, but you want it. But you just don't. And and the reality is that the idea of independence is heavily romanticized, and of course there is an element of truth to that romanticization. Like, of course you want that independence, you want that freedom, you want to go ahead, but in reality, are you ready for that? Because you have your whole life. You have a beautiful life that you're building for yourself. You don't need to rush. You don't need to be on anyone else's timetable other than your own. And that's just a little bit of advice I would give. But I'm not going to ramble on for too long. I feel like I've kind of covered that little bit, that little advice bit, because I will just go on a tangent. And another thing I would suggest is make the most of your commute. A lot of people are like, oh, I can never be a commuting student, because imagine having to spend all that time on the bus. Like, I had already spent a year commuting to a like college, like literally like 15 minutes away from the university that I'm now at. So the bus and things wasn't new to me. Like, I had done that for almost a year, and I'd gotten used to being commuting. Obviously there's like an extra 15-20 minutes on top of my commute, but I don't mind that whatsoever. That's fine. Like, it's not the commute that bothers me. It's kind of like how I spend my commute. So I would suggest use podcasts, listen to music, get speaking to people. You might even find that on your commute you see a bunch of other uni students, and you might just see people. I personally can't use my commute to work. Like, so many people have been like, oh, you can use your commute to do your uni work and things. And like, no, because have you tried working on a bus? I see some people taking out their laptops and things, but no, I've tried to knit in the car, I've tried to knit in the bus, and if I can't knit, I won't be able to focus on it. And I think that's just me, because I get easily overwhelmed, and if things aren't like steady and perfect in things with my work, I will just not be able to focus on it, and it'll stress me out so much. So yeah, podcasts and music are my go-tos. But yeah, is there any other advice? Well, the last thing I kind of want to say, it's not really advice, it's more just like kind of a comment, is that I want unis to kind of bear in mind that they have got a commuting student population that they kind of just forget about. You are still part of the student body almost, and you are still entitled to an experience. And yes, you're there to learn and things, but you are there for the uni to cater for the uni to kind of help you in any way that they can, which, like, I definitely feel like societies, clubs, events and things, if they were done more during the day, it would help commuting students so much. And I know that's not always possible, because Hannah, there's classes going on during the day, which of course, but if there was like societies, like that go on from like, when like after school clubs and things would go on after school, you know, if there was things on at like kind of the same time, you know, like between 4 and things, you know, like back in secondary school, you know, rather than having things that run on to like 10 to 11 o'clock at night, because that's just not feasible for a commuting student. Um, but yeah, unis, just don't forget about your commuting students. We are still there, and we are still, you know, a larger population of the uni student, larger part of your population than you may think. So yeah, I've rambled on for 15 minutes about it, but I hope that kind of gives you a clear picture of what a commuting student experience is like, kind of the reasons why I commute, and kind of the struggles I still have about that decision. But hopefully, you know, if you have decided to commute and you're kind of like coming in, hey, you know, that decision is not forever. You can always, you know, change your mind at any point. You know, there's so many avenues you can go down in terms of home life and where you're staying and things in during your time at university. When they say the world is your oyster, it really is. There's so many decisions you can make, and there's so many opportunities that while you're at university, you might as well take them. That's my little nugget of advice, anyway. But I'll leave you guys with that, and I am going to finish this video here because I'm starting to get really hungry and really craving some lunch. So I'm gonna go and sort myself out with that. But yeah, like I say, I hope you have a more better idea of what the reality is for a commuting student to university. And yeah, I will see you guys in another video. Bye. By the way, I hope any background noise wasn't too annoying. I will try and fix that in editing. If not, I'll do my best. But yeah, I just thought I would make this little video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.